My name is Molly. I work with NAMI Marin, and NAMI Marin and Opening the World have partnered together to bring you this Mental Health Awareness Month event, which we've titled The Power of Storytelling. So thank you very much to Marin County of Behavioral Health and Recovery Services for making this programming possible. Really incredible support. Let's go to the next slide here. So for some introductions. So again, I mentioned already, my name is Molly, work with NAMI Marin, and I'll be moderating the panel today. We have a great event for you today with some incredible panelists, and I'm excited to introduce you to them all. But I'm also joined by our co-hosts, so Lou and Janine. I'll pass it over to them for some introductions on who they are, their organizations, and some background into their storytelling program. So Lou, I'll pass it to you.
Hi there, everyone. My name's Lou Enga. I'm the Executive Director of Marin County affiliate of National Association for the Mentally Ill. And our mission is to provide advocacy, education, and support to individuals and family members that have been affected by mental illness. And we're co-hosting today because with the support of BHRS, we provide a storytelling program that includes 2 6-week-long storytelling workshops, one in the spring and one in the fall, to help people with lived experience become comfortable telling their stories. And we're forming a speakers bureau. So I want to give a shout out to Edward Gunawan because he's our storyteller trainer for those workshops, and he's a participant today. And I want to thank you all again for coming, and I'm going to turn it over to Janine.
Thanks, Lou. Hi, everyone. My name is Janine Curley, and by profession, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I'm also the founder and program director of a program called Opening the World. And our mission is to address trauma with young adults. And we do a variety of different volunteer work locally, nationally, and globally. And then we also develop leaders from a vocational and educational standpoint. So our partnership with BHRS, with the Prevention Early Intervention Program, was to provide films, film clips, where we were able to highlight different people's stories of things that they've gone through. And as Lou was saying earlier, it's just really important. By going through this process, it's actually a way of healing. So going through this part and then having the secondary gain of having people in our community to actually see these clips is really beneficial, because of course, when they see these clips, they realize that they're not isolated, whether that's in their own anxiety or depression or PTSD symptoms, but that there's somebody else that's out there that has had similar challenges and actually has learned how to overcome them through a variety of different coping strategies. So thank you so much for coming today. I'm really looking forward to this event.
Great. Thank you, Janine and Lou. So happy to have you here. So we'll keep going here. And just as a reminder for everybody here, this is an environment where, we hope that people can share their stories and be vulnerable in a safe environment. And so just as a reminder, it means all of us here in attendance, it's up to us to show up with compassion, non-judgment, respect, curiosity, and support. We're building, a community here, busting stigma. So we ask for that commitment from all of you. And I should note that we do have a dedicated time for Q&A at the end of our panel today. So please submit your questions through the chat function on your Zoom. And Janine and Lou will be going through those questions and hope to cover as many possible at the end. So please submit those questions via the chat. All right, here we go. So let's get going with our main event. As I said, we're joined today by 5 amazing panelists. They've all worked in some capacity with NAMI Marin and Opening the World in various ways. So I'll briefly introduce them and then showcase a couple of beautiful story clips, film clips, as Janine mentioned, from Opening the World. And that's going to give you an even better sense of who some of our storytellers are and what their story is. So just first up here, I'll say, introduce Kate. She is a wife, a mother, child suicide loss survivor, activist, advocate, and mixed media artist. We also have Chris. He's a small business owner of Clean Apparel. Check it out, clean-apparel.com, and is also an alum of Opening the World. He inspires others with his personal stories of trials, tribulations regarding substance abuse and mental health. Also, as Lou mentioned, we have Edward. He is an award-winning author and filmmaker, and he's hosted our NAMI Marin Stories of Marin workshop series, coaching our community of storytellers. We also welcome Carmen, who now works with Opening the World, actually, and her own journey with her mental health has created a profound passion for helping others. And lastly, we welcome Omar, who provides his film expertise for Opening the World, and creates some of those films that you will see to, uniquely capture somebody's journey with mental health issues. And he's also driven and informed on these topics due to his own experience with a family member. So welcome to all of our panelists. Maybe we give a little round of applause, clap, clap. All right. And without further ado, we'll just watch these little clips and then we'll get going into our discussion. So enjoy.
There's no indication that he was suicidal at all. All we saw was a boy who was trying really hard to get it right, to live his best life. So he hid it really well, too well. We did not see the signs. I just wish we could have seen, who he was meant to become, to be able to see what he could accomplish in life, and because he could have done a lot. I miss these signs. They were really subtle, and it's easy to miss them, and I understand that, and I've tried to be kind to myself, but you do kind of judge yourself. You can really go down this rabbit hole, this spiral thinking of, if I had said this, maybe he would have lived. I didn't let myself sink into the depression. I immediately got involved in advocacy work. I remember just scouring the internet looking for suicide prevention trainings and anything related to suicide prevention that I could find. Everyone wants to know why these children who have everything choose to end their lives. And it's the biggest question, because you see these young people, they're living in affluence, but when they opt out, it's so confusing. Because our kids are under so much stress and pressure to be, the best at everything. Not that we put that pressure on him, but I think it's a societal pressure. It's our culture. Be the best athlete, get the straight A's, get into the best college. They have this anxiety that builds up. They don't have that sense of, I'm here to share my gifts with the world, that I can make a difference. We're not just these humans that are here to perform. There's meaning and purpose in life, and I think that's really lacking in our culture with our young people. There's no indication.
I did methamphetamines for about 10 years. I started putting myself into bad situations just to get drugs. The first time I did heroin, I almost overdosed. I think I was out. I think I stopped breathing for a little bit, and then I woke up and I came back to life somehow. I was paranoid. I was thinking everybody was out to get me. It was miserable, and I never want to go back to that again. I couldn't imagine having the life that I have today, because when I look back, I was sleeping behind dumpsters and cold and waking up in the rain. My clothes were soaked, and I just wanted to stop being miserable. The best thing to know is that there is help out there. We're not hopeless. Just putting a little action towards doing something positive by reaching out to people and being a part of it has changed my life exponentially.
When I was a kid and I had went through a lot of significant trauma, I didn't even understand what mental health really was or mental health issues were. No one really came and talked to me about it. It was just knowing that certain traumatic events had created something that I felt was abnormal in me. And I didn't cope with it for a long time. I kind of just acted like it wasn't a problem. When I say cope, I mean in a healthy way. Also, the way I felt about mental health when I was a youth was I was scared of it, right? In our society, people are labeled as crazy or mentally ill, and then it's kind of frowned upon, right? And the reason why I was scared of it is because I think my biggest fear in life was ending up like my mom, who's a schizophrenic. And the fact that drugs and alcohol could actually cause that to happen was very scary for me, but I didn't know what else to do at that time. So when I started, actually therapy was a huge tool for me that I didn't mention yet. From the time I was a kid up until high school, I was in therapy for the most part. So that really helped me learn what these emotions are, how they impacted me, and how I could use them in positive ways instead of negative ones. So I think talking about my feelings and identifying what my triggers are really huge for managing my depression and anxiety. So what is it that's causing me to feel depressed and anxious? And when those feelings come up, what can I do to not run from them? Because running from them or self-medicating is like putting a Band-Aid on it. Or what I used to do as well is bottle them up, everything is okay, everything's fine, nothing's wrong, right? And the problem with that is it's compounding your emotions into a bottle. And if there's nowhere for those emotions to go, eventually that lid is going to pop off and you're going to explode, or it's going to manifest itself in different ways, right? So when I don't deal with my mental health, my anxiety and depression, to be specific, in a positive way, I don't show up for things that are important, right? I'm not there. I'm not fully present for those who love and care about me. I don't feel like showing up to work. I feel like isolating. I don't feel like really putting time and energy into what really matters. So how I cope with that, because the thing about mental illness is it doesn't just go away. Depression and anxiety for me isn't something that just magically disappeared. It was that I learned how to cope with it. And how I do that is through exercising. I work out every other day, and the reason why that's beneficial for my mental health and for me as a whole is whatever I'm feeling or going through on any given day, I take it out on the mat. If I'm doing yoga, or if I'm at Orange Theory, I'm running or lifting weights, or rowing, or whatever it may be, or dancing. That's something else that I really like to do. And not only is it releasing endorphins in my brain, which create positive emotions, I'm physically getting that stagnant energy out of my body and releasing it. I'd say exercise is huge in coping with that. The biggest thing for me has been a quote that Janine actually told me when I was probably 14 years old, when we met her around that time, is failure won't destroy you, giving up will. The reason why that resonates with me so much still to this day is that I think having anxiety, I'm always scared to try new things because fear of failure, or I'm drawing back on things that didn't work out in the past. And it doesn't matter how many times I try, eventually I will succeed. So whatever it is that I'm struggling with life, if I really want it to work and work out, I'm going to keep persevering, I'm going to keep going, and eventually I will come out successful in any given situation.
All right. Beautiful. I just want to honor and acknowledge those beautiful stories that were shared so vulnerably, and the gorgeous videos that were created, Janine, by you and your team. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. And without further ado, let's jump into our panel discussion here. So if you all would like to see just the person who's talking on the screen, you can switch it to speaker mode, and then you'll see our panelists each speaking. All right, so let's get going. I'd like to ask this question to all of our panelists, actually. I'll start with the question and then just call on you. We'll have a conversation. So my first question is really, when did you start sharing your story? Maybe you remind us of the topic, the theme, and for our filmmakers, when did you start your journey as a filmmaker and storyteller, and what inspired you to do so? So Kate, I'll start with you. Welcome.
Thank you, Molly. So grateful to be here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'd like to just do a little shout out to my husband. It's our 30th wedding anniversary today, and he's on, as well as my 2 daughters. So thanks. Okay, so my name is Kate Ruehle, as Molly said. I started sharing my story a few short months after Warren died by suicide, and I call my story, my talk, or I refer to it as loss, love, and healing through advocacy. So my story is my personal experience, what I've learned about mental health and suicide through the loss of my son. And I hope that my experiences and what I've learned through this sudden and tragic loss will help others to avoid the pain and suffering that my family has endured. And that's when I got started.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Kate. And we're so grateful to have you here.
Sure.
And I'd love to hear from Chris now. Chris, what about you? When did you start sharing your story?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm Chris. So when I first started sharing my story, it was in a recovery environment, and so just briefly, like the last time I was in recovery, I remember somebody asking me to share my story, and I had like not even a month clean and sober. I'm like, okay, I was like nervous about it, and I ended up sharing, and I don't think I was ready for it. And I noticed that it brought up like, I'm like, oh shoot, there's still some unhealed parts of me. So I remember that, and next time I came into recovery, this time I have about 6 years, a little over 6 years now. And I remember I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait a little bit till I do. I have to heal a little bit, and so I had probably about maybe a year or a little over a year, and I felt like I had done enough internal work to share my story to where I wouldn't infect, I guess, some of those old wounds. So yeah, that was the time, and I remember when I did that, I thought I was alone in the whole process, and having other people come up after the meeting, been like, "Hey, me too. I had this and I had that happen." That was super empowering for me, and it was kind of a relief at the same time. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Yes, it absolutely answers the question. Thanks, Chris, for sharing more just about how you started to share your story, and then you also took a step back or took a pause and then re-engaged in it, to as almost like a form of self-care, it sounds like, to really make sure you felt ready. Yeah. Thank you. And Ed, what about you? One of our filmmakers and storytelling coach.
Hi, everyone. I'm Edward. Good to see you. Yeah, so I am, I guess I started telling stories in general around 15 years ago after I finished college. I was involved in theater, and then I moved on to film. So I had a career in that. But specifically for mental health, I started sharing my own story, somebody who lived with depression, anxiety. In 2018, I was living in Hong Kong at that time. I was involved with a group that does live storytelling, which is kind of like the MOF here in the US. And through that, I got connected to a nonprofit organization there, and I started going into classrooms and businesses to share more. Through that experience, I created a webcomic based on that life story, and it's available now if you'd like to watch it, to read it too, at projectpressplay.com. And so it's a collaboration that I had with my brother, who's an illustrator, and I was able to use that comic basically to go into even more spaces, like classroom especially, to talk to younger folks. And then around 2-3 years ago, during the pandemic, I started facilitating and hosting storytelling workshops. And last year, I got the opportunity to work with NAMI Marin. And so for the past year, we've been doing the storytelling workshops. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Ed. And I'm excited to go and find the comic. I have yet to see that, so thank you for sharing. And Omar, what about you? When did you start your journey as a filmmaker and storyteller?
Hello, my name is Omar. I want to say when I first started was around probably 2018, at least for my mental health part and storytelling. I want to say I started around there. That's when I started. That's when I joined OTW, and that pretty much kicked off everything when it came to storytelling, mental health, and all that. Because I started working with Janine, and she started teaching me all these different things about mental health and how to deal with it, or how to help people who have mental health issues and stuff like that. And she was also the one who came up to me and proposed the idea of starting filming. She was given a grant or an opportunity to make these films. And she came up to me and asked me if I wanted to join. And I said, yes. And I want to say that started around 2020 is, I believe, 2020, 2021 is, I want to say, when I first started making films and working with making films. And that pretty much kicked off at least the filming part of my journey.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Did you always know you wanted to be in filmmaking, to be a filmmaker?
For me personally, no. It was just something she offered, and I was like, all right, I'll try it out. I've never done filmmaking in the past before. It was the first time, at least for me, like working with this kind of things, working with cameras, working with like editing film and stuff like that. It was just something new, and for me personally, it was an interest simply because it was something I've never done, and it's something that seems interesting. I always watched movies, or at least like YouTube videos, things like that had always interested me, and it felt like somewhere where I could start at least working with something that I personally liked in my personal life.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you for sharing, Omar.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. All right. And Carmen, what about you?
Hi, I'm Carmen. I first started sharing my story in therapy in a one-on-one setting. And then I was in recovery for a while and started speaking similar to Chris in a public setting. And then that transitioned to Opening the World when the program was founded. We're in our 11th year now. So it's definitely been baby steps and getting more comfortable talking about everything. But I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah, we're grateful to have you. Thank you, Carmen, for sharing your story and working with Opening the World as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So a couple more questions for the group. So I guess Kate, my first question for you would be, what was the biggest hurdle, or was there a hurdle in beginning to share your story? And were you able to do something to overcome that?
Yeah, there was a big hurdle because I had done a Zoom early on. And I was not prepared. I was really stressed and overwhelmed, and I missed an opportunity to share in a meaningful way about Warren. When I vowed that if I ever got a chance to do it again, that I would be prepared. And thankfully, I got another chance to do it with the NAMI storytelling series. So I'm very grateful for that. And so I was really worried that, just remembering how that felt and how it didn't go right. And I ran out of time and just thinking, oh my gosh, what if I lose my way again? And, kind of wringing my hands a little bit. And then I was like, no, I've got this. Like I did Edward's writing class and I'm prepared. I have an outline. I have Molly and Molly, we had our practice sessions. And so that's how I overcame my fear. I did the writing class and I did my work. I did my homework and I knew what I wanted to say, what my message was and all of that. And so that's how I overcame it.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the shout out, Kate.
I can't say enough about the NAMI Writers Workshop. And I know several of you here are checking it out and you told me you're interested. So I'm really glad to see you here checking it out and I hope you do it. It's so worth it.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Thank you. I love that the kind of getting over the initial hump or the initial fear, kind of trying something out in your talk, learning from it, and then knowing what you had to implement to tell your story as you wanted to. That's beautiful. Thank you. And Carmen, what about you? You had just shared too that, it's a process, right? Like learning and to share your story and just starting. So what has been the biggest hurdle for you in starting to share your story?
I think my biggest fears were being judged and labeled as crazy. And there's a negative connotation associated with that word. So I try to refrain from using it. And also I didn't want people to think because I have a schizophrenic mother that I'm schizophrenic as well. But the more that I told my story and shared it, the more I found that I was met with compassion and empathy versus judgment. And then people in turn have felt more comfortable opening up to me and sharing their stories as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, just getting over that initial, like, what if I'm judged? What happens, if people think this or that?
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And Chris, what about you? You mentioned too, like in the beginning, kind of this entry and then re-entry into your storytelling journey. So, tell me more just about some of the things that helped you to enter back into storytelling.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of it, relating with Carmen and Kate, just kind of getting over that, I'd say just anxiety, fear of being judged, and you know what I mean, kind of that fear of like, what if I do bring up that stuff and open a new wound or something? Just kind of that was a hurdle. Just like walking through it. And another thing that I guess had a fear about was not wanting to trigger oh, how much, like what's the appropriate amount to share about, like I don't want to trigger somebody else. So just kind of, you know what I mean? I'll kind of test the waters a little bit, like when I'm like, okay, so like look at the room a little bit. But like ultimately, like what I found is like, just like if somebody is triggered, like just being like, let them know, like there's all these resources around to help you out. Just reach out to somebody, and maybe kind of just give a trigger warning. And yeah, and then, oh yeah, another hurdle is like every time I have shared my story, it's like I'll have like what I plan in my head of like what I want to share, and then there's like what you want to share, and then what you actually share, and then at the end, like what you wish you would like left out. And what I found is there's always like been that, I'm like, oh, I should have talked about this, but yeah, I've noticed there's usually always like that what you wish you shared. So just kind of reaffirming that with myself and just like giving myself a break. Yeah, I think that's super important.
Oh, I love what you just said, giving yourself a break. It's like giving yourself that break, giving yourself the self-compassion to say, you know what, like I did a good job and I can learn from this and keep going for the next one.
That's right.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. And Ed, from a slightly, I guess from a slightly different perspective, maybe even as our storytelling coach, what advice or tips would you give to someone who may be interested in sharing their story, but isn't sure where to start or where to even begin?
Yeah, I can share that, but maybe I want to touch back on because I also share my own stories, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it actually is very connected. I started sharing my own personal mental health story after reading a lot of Brene Brown. I don't know whether you've heard of her. I describe her as a top priestess and a social scientist who does a lot of work in shame and vulnerability, of course. And it's actually reading her work and really being familiar with what she is advocating was helpful for myself. And I would actually recommend others too who are interested to share their personal stories to read some of her work. She has a couple of powerful TED Talks, for example, so it's available for free if you want to check it out. That's a good primer. And if you're interested to learn more, then there are multiple books that she has. And but I think just getting to know some of those concepts will be helpful because I think it helped me myself too a lot in how then I allow myself or permit myself to be vulnerable. And I think there is a degree of vulnerability that we all do if we want to tell our personal story, especially in mental health. And so I think that's the thing that I try to cultivate in the workshops and also when I am sharing with others on how to get started or when they want to continue on as well. I also try to, I'm looking down at my notes, like what Chris was saying earlier too, that I think having a degree of care for the audience and then for yourself is super important. And I think that is connected to limiting or having healthy boundaries with yourself, especially. I think one of the most common thing that I hear from participants or storytellers is that, oh my God, I feel like I'm oversharing and it feels very uncomfortable. And sometimes people may get triggered themselves, the speaker. And yeah, so I think having those boundaries, knowing those boundaries for ourselves is super important. It is, you're showing yourself care and also showing care for the audience in that way. And in my workshop, usually I think, you know, the participants who have attended my workshop will know this very much because I keep stressing it where I try to remind of our purpose in giving the talk or in sharing our stories and then who the audience to. I think that is connected and like then how much we can share, how much we want to share, given the opportunity, the specific of the venue and the audience.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Ed, not only for sharing some of your tips, but your own personal inspiration too. The Brene Brown, I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. Like you said, if somebody has not listened to her, read her work, it is highly recommended. And I love that, like searching for inspiration, searching, for inspiration in our communities, as well as those public figures around storytelling. That's great. And Omar, I'm curious what it's been like for you to also record other people's mental health journeys on film. What has that been like for you?
For me, I want to say it's been different simply because at least me growing up, I've never had to like listen to anyone really express their like mental issues and stuff like that in the way that they have in the films. Like they just tell me everything they've been through and how they cope with it or how they haven't been coping with it and stuff like that. And for me, it's been a different journey because I've never really had those types of situations. I've never had people come up to me, or at least people come up to me oftenly to tell me about their mental issues or their mental journey. And for me, it's just been interesting because it's something that hasn't happened in my life, and it feels different just listening to all these people talk about their story, and then me having to put that story into a film so everyone can understand it, and also in a way where the people who I listen to are also happy with what I've put out, because they feel as if it captures what they wanted to tell the world or everyone around them.
Yeah. So it's like you've gotten more exposure to people vulnerably sharing their stories with you, the good, the bad, the ugly,
Yeah.
all of it, and creating a story from that.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I wonder too, I mean, a part of our topic today is, for everybody here is the power of storytelling, right? And especially the healing power of storytelling, and the healing that can come from this type of self-expression. So I'd love to hear, Kate, from you. How has storytelling helped you just in your personal healing process?
So many ways. It has helped me heal in so many ways. I feel like storytelling is just a healing sort of therapy. It's therapeutic for so many people. And for me in particular, just knowing that my story, my experiences are of value to others, that they can really help educate, inform, inspire, and free people up to share their stories and to not suffer in silence like my son did. There's just something so healing about being able to share your story. And I've had my own mental health challenges even before I lost my son. So I plan to share more about that later in the future, but and just using what I've learned to help others see the signs is really, really important. And I know that I've helped people, and when I hear people say that they have learned from my story that it has helped them heal or their loved one heal or help them find hope, that is the most healing experience. It's like a healing balm to my heart. That's just the best thing ever.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, sharing, seeing your impact, helping others through your storytelling as a form of advocacy is really powerful. And Carmen, what about you? How has storytelling so far helped you in your own healing process?
Storytelling has helped me in a few ways. A couple that comes to mind I've learned to be a truth seeker and a truth speaker. I've learned to have a sense of community amongst those who have gone through similar experiences. And it helps me strive to be the best version of myself. Even when I fall short, I get up and I keep going.
I love that. So it's like you've learned some things about yourself through storytelling, like what you're capable of.
Absolutely. And if even one person resonates or gets something from my experience, I'm internally grateful for that.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And Chris, what about you? What have you learned about yourself through storytelling, or how has it helped you in your process?
I would just say that there's like a feeling like for me it was a feeling that I got when I was able to like just be truthful and just share my story and just kind of let those like those walls down, those guards down, and just kind of open myself up. Like there's there's like there's like a feeling when it's almost like a freedom, like, okay, bam, like I just shared that, that's me, that's my truth. And then what others were sharing about, like having, somebody come up and like, hey, me too. And just like the identification process of like being able to identify with somebody else, or even if that person didn't go through a similar trauma, but like that feeling that people are able to relate to, like that despair or pain or whatever it is. Yeah, that's a good feeling, to know that you're not alone in whatever, everybody has their own struggle, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that we're not alone. That's like, it's building this community and showcasing that it's not just you, and we can be here for one another, and open up those channels through your vulnerability and sharing your story.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And Ed, what about you? What have you learned about yourself through your own personal storytelling, through your other art and other storytelling as well?
Yeah, so much. I think it's been said a lot before that stories and storytelling is how we see ourselves and how we see the world, right? And so when we can change how to revise or change those narratives for ourselves, then we can change how we see ourselves and the world. And that alone, I think, has been like the most impactful in my own personal life, how I've revised those narratives. Even in psychotherapy, there is a modality called narrative therapy, right? And that specifically is focused on this. And yeah, and so then I feel like it is almost like cognitive reframing in practice for myself, as somebody who has experienced a lot of anxiety, depression tendencies. It really weighs a lot on me and how I think something is gonna go. And so then it really does challenge me a lot in, okay, how can I see this, or how I can reframe this for myself, to have a more, perhaps just even an optimistic outlook. And that can make a big difference. And so I also think that, when I'm echoing Brene Brown again, that when we're vulnerable, then we also encourage others to be vulnerable as well. And I think I have seen so many times of this happening, especially in a workshop setting, where when we share our stories, then encourages others to do the same. And in that way, I think we're like affirming and also giving permission and really encouraging one another and expressing solidarity with one another. And really like what Chris was saying too, not being alone, not feeling alone.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Ed. And I like what you shared about reframing also for yourself, like learning how to even reframe, and how maybe that's helped you in other areas of your life. So thank you. And Omar, how has being able to capture other people's mental health journeys, how has that shifted your perspective about mental health, for yourself, for your family, friends? Like, how has that shifted your perspective?
For me, the biggest change would be how I viewed mental health. At least before I joined OTW, or probably especially making like the films and stuff like that, I had no idea how effective mental health was in somebody's life. Like, I understood that some people would get like depression, anxiety, and stuff like that, but I never knew to what extent it actually affected them throughout their lives. And for me, especially when the filmmaking part of it, I started doing those films and everything. For me, it really changed my perspective on how effective it was in their lives. And it just made me understand what people go through and how difficult it is to sometimes have these mental issues. At least first, that's for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. You share just, not having that lived experience of understanding like, oh, this is the impact that it can have on somebody's life, and the ways that they may need support, and, giving you just a different perspective. That's great. Thank you. And, I've talked about this with a couple of you at this point, and even shared my tips and tricks, but I wanted to ask any rituals, tricks, something that help you beforehand. I know we've talked about little movements we can do, things that help us. So I'd love to start with Kate by just hearing any rituals that you do before you storytell.
Yeah, so I always have a picture of Warren. You can probably see him back here on the shelf. So I bring him in, and I have a couple little angels that other angel mom friends have given me on either side of the frame. So I set those in place, and then I light a candle, and I ask for my angel guide, Warren, to join me and speak through me. And I feel his presence. I feel a calm presence when I do that. And I also use another plug for Edward Gunaway. And I think I pronounced his last name wrong, which I should know better, but I do the breathing exercises that he taught us. Yeah, that really helps a lot. In particular, I think it's the box breathing that works so well. So yeah, the breathing is really good, and just centering, getting your feet on the ground, grounding yourself, and pulling focus.
Yeah, wonderful. That's a beautiful ritual, Kate. And I love that you also picked up a tip from Ed as well. Thank you. And Carmen, what about you? Any tricks or rituals that you have?
Breathing definitely helps. I have a stress ball with me. I squeeze when I get anxious. You actually recommended the power pose, so I definitely did that before we logged on today. And then someone really special to me says, when you're nervous or anxious about public speaking or things like this, it means that you care. And also remembering, like, leave my pride aside. I'm not here to talk about me from an ego space. It's more to help someone else. So just remind myself of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thanks for showing us your stress ball. I love the visual representation. Fantastic. And the power pose. I did that too. Thank you. And Chris, what about you? Do you have anything special that you do before you speak?
Okay. Yeah, I usually just I do the same, focus on breathing. People are already saying it. One thing I noticed that's best for me is to completely forget that I am like sharing. That's why you guys, I don't think, didn't hear from me for a little bit. Actually, I was driving back, but I'll completely, because I try not to think about it too much. I just know the key points where I'm going to talk to and just try to, share from the heart. I think that's just it. I try not to overthink it, and just stay in the present moment and keep it simple.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. I love that. Keep it simple. Stay in the present moment. And Ed, what about you? Do you have any other tools that you recommend that we haven't talked about? Any other good nuggets for us?
Yeah, so I try to technically prepare as much as possible. So that's like going over information and stuff like that. But once I know that, okay, I got this, like I have most of the information down, then I try to do the breathing thing. But personally, I actually like vocal warm-ups. I've shared this in my workshop too. And it's kind of silly, but I really enjoy it. Like I don't really sing, but it combines a few things. It combines breathing. It combines your tongue twister exercise, basically, so you can articulate better and project your voice better, right? And then lastly, I enjoy it. Whenever I kind of like sing or like do my vocal warm up, it puts me in a very, very happy mood. And I think I can bring that energy and spirit into the thing that I'm gonna do. So maybe vocal warm up may not be a thing, and it's okay. But finding something that you enjoy and something you can have fun doing right before, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe I'll have to try that. That's something I have yet to do. Thank you for that. And then Omar, you too, like what do you do to prepare not only yourself, but your storytellers or people you're working with, people who are on camera? Is there anything that you like to do to prepare, or a ritual that helps set the stage?
At least for myself, preparing myself, mainly I want to say breathing mainly helps for me too. It's just like planting myself wherever I am, to make sure that, or at least like just to ground myself, to calm myself, to make sure that like everything's okay and that everything's gonna be okay. And then for people that I'm interviewing, stuff like that, I mainly try to tell them that it's like a process, that like we could take like as much time as you need, that we don't have to finish this like in one go. So, make sure that you're comfortable with what you're talking about, and that if you have any moments that you want to just like calm down, we could stop and just make sure you're feeling okay and that you're prepared to continue.
That's great. That sounds like a great approach. Thanks, Omar. All right. And I have just a couple more questions for our panelists to kind of close things out. And then of course, we'd love to open it up to, questions and honoring and acknowledging comments. But I'm really curious from this whole group, in what ways has sharing your story in the various ways that you have, or other stories, how has that empowered you to change your life in other areas? Like, how has it impacted the rest of who you are, the rest of your life? Let's start with Kate.
I am more aware of how I show up in the world, and I am more authentic. I realized that I am sharing a lot of ideas and thoughts about how to be, mentally well. And so I need to walk the talk. So I try to be as much of a mentor or an example as I can be, especially with the youth that I speak to. And I get very vulnerable with them and share my struggles and my challenges with them. So I find that I just am so much more real and authentic, mostly. And also just, walking the talk.
Yeah.
Gotta make it real.
Got to make it real. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And Carmen, what about you? How has this influenced other areas of your life?
It's helped me find my voice, overcome some of my fears, helped me break generational trauma. I'm still working on that one. It's taught me to honor my feelings. I think as a society, we're taught, we're all born with the same human emotions: happiness, sadness, anger. Yet as a society, we're conditioned to typically only release the positive ones. And so I think it's important to feel the anger and sadness, even when it's hard. And that's something that I still struggle with to this day. But when I don't stuff those emotions down, like I talked about in my video, I actually feel a little bit better after I release them. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Omar, what about you? How has filmmaking or sharing your own stories, learning about others' stories, how has that changed other parts of your life?
I want to say mainly, at least for me personally, I want to say I'm more aware of people's feelings and their emotions. if they're feeling sad or if they're feeling anxious and stuff like that, I have a better time understanding and reading those emotions. So I'm not so, I want to say I'm better at being around them, and it's not it don't feel like as if I'm someone who shouldn't be there for them and stuff like that, I want to say.
Oh, that's great. I love what you just said. I'm just going to repeat it back. I don't feel like somebody who shouldn't be there for them, meaning you've kind of stepped into the role where you've allowed yourself to be a person that can show up for somebody who needs help and support. That's great. Thank you, Omar. All right. And Chris, what about you? Oh, I think you're muted still here.
Okay, there we
There
go.
we go.
I'd say for me, like sharing my story, getting vulnerable, it's expanded my the people that I associate with, or I've been able to make more friends and people that related that way. From that experience of some, like after a meeting or an event or something, somebody coming up like, hey, I really felt what you said. And I'm just trying to imagine if I never had shared my story, like I'm thinking my world would be a lot smaller than it is now. And just like my life is so full today. And I'm sure that sharing my story and, allowing myself to get vulnerable and listening to others at the same time, like that has played a big part of where I'm at today.
Thank you, Chris. I love that. It's expanded your world. It's really beautiful. And Ed, what about you? Bring us home with this this question.
I think for me, it's really taught me about the necessity and importance of community, that we cannot just do this on our own, that we do need others and we can lean on others as well. And then more personally is that I actually learned to be a lot more self-compassionate when I am facilitating or teaching. Just the other day, I was thinking to myself that like, oh my God, like I would never speak critically to one of my participants ever, right? But then just the other day, I realized that like, oh my God, I am being so critical towards myself, and I was just like, kind of just berating, like, oh my God, like you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and like you could have done this better, and da da da. And it's like, I would never speak like that to so I feel like it's actually a good mirror for me to like, oh, I need to also do this for myself as when I'm practicing it with others around. So
yeah, that's such an important lesson. Self-compassion always, not just for storytelling, but to blanket the rest of your life. That's beautiful. Thank you. And I just want to take a moment to honor and acknowledge all of you, all of our panelists, all of our audience. It's really very special not only to know you, to hear your stories, to see it in film, to have you teaching our classes, but to hear more about the inner workings of your storytelling experience. I think it's really inspiring. It's really motivating. It makes me feel like, oh, I want to storytell, like I hope that some of our audience can relate to that feeling as well. So before we move on to Q&A, I just wanted to give a huge thank you and round of applause to our panelists. Fantastic to hear from you. And I'll pass it over to Lou and Janine for any questions for all of you or any acknowledgements.
So we were going to have people put questions in the chat if anyone has any questions. And then, Janine and I will sort of take turns. Someone already did send me an email saying they were interested in the workshop. So that's nice.
Great. And I'm curious too, Lou, if there's if there aren't any questions right now, I mean, we covered a lot of ground, but, if folks, if there's one takeaway maybe that you have from the meeting today, from hearing the panelists. Like, drop that in the chat. Tell us, tell us what your takeaway is from today. We'd love to see them.
And while you're all doing that, I'm going to mention that I also participated in the entire storytelling workshop, the 6 weeks this last spring round, and it really built community because we're all sharing our vulnerability and our family stories. And yeah, it's kind of an amazing opportunity. I also feel like a lot of us go around with a certain amount of sort of silent shame. And that's really sort of opened up and broken up if you're able to tell your story, because usually other people give you feedback and say, yes, me too. I have something really similar that happened, or I could really relate to this part of your story. And it really helps to make you feel seen and sort of reduce your shame.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see who's saying things in the chat.
I'll jump in too. Just from what I was listening to overall, so many key points, about having self-compassion. I truly believe that in order for us to really have compassion for another person, we need to have compassion for ourselves. Empathy and compassion is so important. And then, hearing everybody's ways of coping, it was fantastic. I even got a few ideas. So it was just really wonderful to hear all of that and everybody's input.
Mm-hmm.
And Janine, what someone put a question in the chat just asking for more information about your organization.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. I just put in our website, but just in a nutshell, we address young adults between the ages, well, we'll go like 15, 16 up to 26, and we do have some outliers that are up to about 30. But we focus on a variety of different activities such as education, vocation. All year round, we fundraise. In fact, just yesterday, we were fundraising at a garage sale because we travel in our summer months. We go abroad or we're within the country. So this year we're in the country and we're also going abroad. So what we do is we volunteer throughout the places that we visit, and we focus on sustainable projects, and we offer services to different cultures and different people that we normally wouldn't actually integrate with. So you can go to the website. I could give you more information. And then if you had any more questions, my contact information is on the website. I'd be more than happy to talk with you. Thanks, Lou.
Thank you. We had a question from Kara to Edward asking if he has worked with younger ages and what was that like?
Hi, Kara. Thank you for the question. Yes, I have worked with younger folks, not in a workshop capacity, but I've given talks and presentation. So I have actually done some after school program, but kind of one-off. It is harder, I would say, personally, much more of a challenge to maintain attention. I think anyone who would speak to junior high school kids would know this. It is really, really challenging to maintain their attention. Yeah, but I think that's actually the more, it's very important to reach those communities, that population, especially they're a lot more at risk in a lot of ways. And so even though it is challenging, I think it's worth it to continue doing it, not just for me, but I think everybody else too, if they are interested, because I think the more we normalize these conversations, the better we can in destigmatizing. And I know that Kate is speaking to high school kids or junior high school kids too. And so maybe she has other tips and ideas or experience that she can share.
I think that Kara is my daughter that's asking the question. She may be interested in doing this storytelling series. I'll talk to her about that.
It was this Kara.
Oh, it was Kara. Okay, sorry. Oops. Wishful thinking.
Great. And I see, Chris, were you raising your hand? Did I see? I think you're muted. There we go.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit on what Janine was saying about that. I don't feel like I talked enough about how opening the world actually impacted me. Aside from recovery, just to maybe help answer that other question, by the time I got clean, I immersed myself with opening the world. And I felt like for me it was just essential because I didn't really have that sense of community, and I felt alone. And we went and we did community service. We traveled, and I feel like that was one of the places where I felt like I was able to be comfortable and start opening up, and I didn't feel so alone. So yeah, I gotta throw the pitch for opening the world a little bit, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for opening the world. Let's do that.
Thanks, Chris. You did the work.
Oh,
Come far.
thank you.
Someone sent a note saying that they were both a therapist and someone with lived experience, and they're interested in the workshop. So go ahead and send me an email. It's lou@namimarin.org. I put it in the chat. You can also, reach out through our website.
Right. Okay.
And we had a lot of people saying thank you and that they liked the workshops and the presentation. So thank you all so much.
Thanks. All right. Lou, Janine, are you getting it? And any other questions, or are there any other panelists that would like to share before we head out? Give a few minutes.
I have a question there, Molly. Someone's asking about the event and where and how they can have access to this recording.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be posting this on the NAMI Marin website coming up this week. So you can view it under our storytelling series archive. So we will send that, we will have that, I think, actually probably within the next 2 days. You'll be able to find the recording on our website. So look out for it there, namimarin.org. And we'll also be sending, through a survey that would be extremely helpful for you all to answer. It's just about this event, some demographic information, just how you felt about this presentation. So it really would mean a lot to us if you'd fill that out. I think we can link it in the chat right now for those of you who, there we go, from Amanda. So there's a Google Doc there if you wouldn't mind clicking on it and filling that out. We'll also send an email to all of our participants tomorrow, just with a little reminder. So.
And lastly, I'm going to say, please do, if you need any kind of support, look at our website. We have 5 family support groups around the county. We have 3 times a year, we have family to family classes. We have a helpline that folks can call at any time. Usually you'll reach a very experienced family member that can share resources. We have a very updated and extensive resource guide online. And we have a calendar that's full of all of these events. So yeah, and it's a newly updated, thank you, Molly. Our website's been newly updated and Molly put a lot of work into that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Quickly?
Oh yes, go for it.
Okay, so I like to share resources. So I'm gonna share a podcast by Ezra Klein that I was just listening to this week. It talks about teens and mental health. So Kara, you may be interested. I'll drop it off in the chat box as well. Really interesting, conversation about that, but very profound and shocking data as well. So maybe something that folks really want.
Yeah. Thank you, Ed. That would be great. Yeah, pop it in the chat. We have so many great resources being shared here. And as Lou said, on the NAMI Marin website, and also for Janine on the Opening the World site. So love all the sharing, love all the resources. Janine, Lou, anything else in closing before we wrap up?
That's it for me. Thank you all for participating, and thank you again, BHRS, for helping support the services.
Yeah.
And likewise, I just thank you to you, Molly, and you for making this happen and doing this partnership. Just really appreciate it. And of course to BHRS and Kara Connors. Yeah, I just think that this was just very valuable, and it's got my mind thinking about, you know, what else would be helpful and impactful, because, you know, it does take a community to really make shifts and changes. So what else can we do in this community to really normalize and destigmatize mental health issues? So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for joining.
Have a good afternoon.